Good evening, everyone. This is Megha, and on the behalf of 4Optum IBID e-learning team, I would like to welcome you all for this e-learning session organized by 4Optum. So, before we had on brief introduction about our program, the IBID e-learning session is an initiative by 4Optum, and it is an interactive program where we discuss about optometry topics. And today we have Dr. Bikram Thapa, who is going to talk about pupil evaluation in neuro-ophthalmology. So before we head on the session, I would like to give brief introduction about our speaker today. So Dr. Bikram Thapa has completed his MBBS from BP Koirala Institute of Health and Science, Dharan. He also completed his post-graduation MD Ophthalmology from Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, Chandigarh. He also holds fellowship in neuro-ophthalmology from Arvind Eye Hospital, Murudai, and also fellowship in vitreoretinal surgery from Lumbini Eye Institute, Bhairaba. He has also working experience of general ophthalmologist at Gita Eye Hospital as well as Nepal Red Cross Society, Surkhet. And currently he is working as an assistant professor at Nepalganj Medical College. He has published several papers in national and international journals as well as presented several oral and poster presentations on national and international conferences.
So good evening all, and today this small e-learning presentation is targeted to for the optometry student and some of the MBBS student who are attending over here, and also for the ophthalmology resident. So it's basic topic, not very detailed and very tough part. We'll try to learn very simple thing in neuro-ophthalmology, one of the least concerned department of ophthalmology. So out of them, we have choose pupil in ophthalmology only in this presentation. So the objective of today's presentation are to know little bit of pupil and its innervation and pupillary pathway. Then second is the different pupillary abnormality in neuro-ophthalmology, which we deal in day-to-day practice. So as all of you know, pupil is the central circular aperture in the iris that allow light to enter into the retina, because iris is the translucent structure which prevent the entry of light from into the retina. So its necessity to function properly by eye, the pupil act as a gateway to entry of the light. So as we know that this is the hole, but this hole is guarded by two important muscle. These two important intraocular muscle are sphincter pupillae, which surrounds circularly around the pupil, and the radial muscle behind, large radial muscle behind, is the dilator pupillae. Also, what we know is parasympathetic nerve supplies the sphincter pupillae muscle and the ciliary muscle, whereas dilator pupillae is supplied by sympathetic nerve. So before going to the this different type of pupil in neuro-ophthalmology, we need to know pupillary light reflex. As all of you know, light reflex is just simply a reflex which must have a stimulus and efferent pathway, then a center in the central nervous system, and efferent pathway through which motor response is carried out from the center of the reflex, and the effector that give the desirable response so as to complete the complete reflex arc. So efferent pathway in this start from the retina, where the photoreceptor are there to convert light stimulus into the action, electrical action potential. Then that action potential can travel along the nerve, optic nerve, optic chiasma, optic tract, just anterior of to the lateral geniculate body. The thing to be remember over here is this impulse of pupillary light reflex does not enter into the lateral geniculate body, optic radiation and visual cortex, which are the part of the rest of the part of the visual pathway. At the level of superior colliculus of midbrain, they enter into the pretectal nuclei in the midbrain. From the pretectal nucleus, these impulse carried to the ipsilateral as well as contralateral Edinger-Westphal nucleus of the oculomotor nerve. So this is the center of pupillomotor constriction or light reflex. So the center of the this reflex is Edinger-Westphal nucleus in the midbrain, from where efferent pathway start as third nerve known as third cranial nerve known as oculomotor nerve. So this nerve take the fiber, this fiber up to the ciliary ganglion, which is located within the orbit, where small nerve arises known as short ciliary nerve, and that supplies sphincter pupillae and the ciliary muscle. Here in this reflex, sphincter pupillae is the effector, which contract and the response, desirable response, meiosis or pupillary constriction happens. So this is the simple illustration of pupillary light reflex. This is of two types. That these are direct as well as consensual. So direct light reflex means when light falls on an eye and its pupil constrict, this part of this light reflex is known as direct light reflex. Whereas when light falls on an eye and pupil of opposite eye constrict, this reflex is known as consensual light reflex. Here, how does this consensual light reflex is possible? This question may arise, but the answer is decussation of pupillary fiber at the chiasmal level, at the level of optic chiasma, and again at the level of midbrain between the pretectal and Edinger-Westphal nucleus, provide completion of this consensual light reflex, as we have seen in the previous photo. Here, these fiber decussate at this level. This is the optic chiasma, and again, if you see the nucleus of over here at pretectal, this fiber runs to the contralateral Edinger-Westphal nucleus as well as the ipsilateral Edinger-Westphal nucleus. So these two decussation of pupillary fiber make consensual light reflex possible. So in this way, these all five component of light reflex completes. Then another pathway we need to know is about the dilator pathway or sympathetic supply of the um, iris muscle, that is dilator pupillae muscle. The first order neuron of sympathetic nervous system start in the posterior part of hypothalamus. Then they descend down through the brainstem and spinal cord up to the ciliospinal center of birds, which is located in the region of C8 to T4 in the lateral horn of the spinal cord. Then these fiber exit from these spinal nerve and reach up to the superior cervical ganglion, where the second order neuron arises. And this second order neuron runs along with the carotid and common carotid and internal carotid artery to enter into the cranial cavity and forms reach up to the trigeminal ganglion, which is the fifth nerve ganglion in the Meckel scale. Once from that place, they run along the ophthalmic division, that is V1 of the trigeminal nerve, to the orbit, where again this nerve divides into many branches, and nasociliary branch carry these fibers along with to reach the dilator pupillae. So stimulus in this part is dark and pathway is similar, and response is mydriasis. So sympathetic nervous system act to dilate the pupil. Thus, the first part of light reflex we have completed. Now the second, another reflex associated with pupil is near reflex. So sometimes the MCQ question can be asked is the triad of near reflex, which is given over there. All of you know that accommodation, meiosis, and convergence. These are the three triad of near reflex. Here something very important thing that we need to know is how does pupillary reflex of accommodation differ from the that of light reflex. So the stimulus in this is blurred image, while suddenly shifting the gaze from distant object to the near object will result in the blurring of image. So the power of lens needed to be increased, which can be done through this reflex. So the visual whole of the visual pathway from retina to the visual cortex act as the efferent limb of accommodation reflex. Lateral geniculate body, optic radiation, and visual cortex, which are not a part of light reflex, are the part of accommodation reflex. That is the one difference in the efferent limb. Then the center of accommodation is parastriate cortex, that is 19 to 22, also known as cortical occipital cortical association area. So from there, occipito-mesencephalic tract arises and it goes to the midbrain up to the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. But at this point, it does not goes to the pretectal nucleus, or this pathway bypass pretectal nucleus. So that is the another point to remember. Accommodation reflex doesn't pass through pretectal nucleus as light reflex. Then accessory ciliary ganglion comes in part of ciliary ganglion in the course of third nerve, where its fiber decussate and exit through short ciliary nerve to reach the ciliary muscle, the main effector of this reflex, along with pupillary constrictor, resulting in accommodation and meiosis. So in this, efferent limb is same, but from lateral geniculate body to visual cortex are different, and center is different, that is parastriate cortex, and it bypasses the pretectal nucleus. This much is important part in accommodation reflex. Similarly, we have to go through the convergence is the another movement of extraocular movement of eye by the co-contraction of both medial rectors. Proprioceptive impulse originated travel along the fifth nerve, that is trigeminal nerve, to the mesencephalic root of the fifth nerve, which act as, where there is a peripheral nucleus, which act as the convergence center, and then from there fiber reach to the Edinger-Westphal, and the finally efferent limb is same as that of the accommodation reflex, and effector that fiber supplied the medial rectus will be contract. After knowing this anatomy, we will go to the examination of pupil. Generally, these all things you are doing in daily practice. Generally, there is single pupil, but sometimes there may be multiple pupil, known as polychoria, that can be seen in Exerfeld Rieger anomaly, ICE syndrome, and sometimes surgically induced. And these are the causes of multiple pupil. It's always central, slightly nasal. Eccentric pupil is called correctopia. It can be seen in surgically induced case and some of these anomalies. It's always circular, but commonly you should know the other shape, and these are festoon pupil, that is irregularly dilated pupil seen in the case of active uveitis with posterior synecdoche. Pupil itself is a hole, so it does not have color, but the background color will be seen as a color of pupil. So color related abnormality are commonly seen as white pupil. You can see in the retinoblastoma and congenital cataract. Normal size varies from 3 to 4 mm depending upon the illumination. Small pupil is known as miosis, while as large is called mydriasis. Regarding reaction, we have talked earlier, light reflex, and near reflex. So now, after knowing this little bit physiology and anatomy, we can enter into the neuroophthalmology. Generally, these are the different type of neuroophthalmic people you can come across. The most common of them is relative afferent pupillary defect, and most of all should know this pupillary defect. Other being total afferent pupillary defect, Argyll-Robertson pupil, reverse Argyll-Robertson pupil, Horner syndrome, then Thornton palsy, Eddie's tonic pupil, hemianopic pupil, and Hutchinson's pupil. So first one is amaurotic light reflex or total afferent pupillary defect. So this thing total means almost total. No light is reaching uh, in the photo along the afferent pathway. So that means it's in complete blindness. Only there will be the amaurotic light reflex. So there will be absence of direct light reflex on the affected eye and consensual light reflex on the opposite eye. So, but if you see normally in diffuse illumination without showing light to one by one, or you so your if your patient is in normally diffusely illuminated condition, the size of pupil are equal in both sides. You cannot say this one is affected, that one is not, because of this consensual light reflects on the affected eye and direct light reflects on the normal eye. The most important and most common neuroophthalmic abnormal pupil is Marcus gun pupil or relative afferent pupillary defect, which was first described by Dr. Marcus Gunn in 1904. The principle of this test is that the strength of direct pupillary response is compared with that of the consensual pupillary response of the same eye. The affected eye's direct response is less than that of the consensual pupillary response. So the dimmer light was perceived in the affected eye, resulting in the dilatation of dilatation of the affected eye on the swinging flash test. It represents the disease anterior to the lateral geniculate body, because it light reflex does not goes to that lateral geniculate body. It is the most commonly it is detected in clinical practice by swinging flashlight test, which sensitivity is almost 92 to 98%. So it is the one of the very strongly suggested tests to perform in clinics. For performing this test, the room should be dark and the focus of the patient or the subject should be at the 6 meter or infinity. So distant focus should be there, otherwise near reflex can alter your observation. Secondly, a transilluminator or a binocular indirect ophthalmoscope is ideal instrument to check this relative occurrent pupillary defect, but generally due to its diffuseness and difficult to carry, difficult to handle, we use pen light. The only defect of pen torch or pen light is its intensity is less than that of indirect ophthalmoscope. So this is the during swinging flashlight test, we should illuminate one eye for 1 to 3 seconds and another eye rapidly shifted to the another eye which also should be equally illuminated for 1 to 3 seconds. So its grading is also important to see the grade severity of disease and to check the response of treatment. So this is also very important for clinician during their patient management. So the common method to grade RAPD are swinging light reflex, which is most commonly used by all of us, other being neutral density filter, infrared videography, and computerized pupillometry. Of those, I have only done swinging light reflex. What about you? I will know later on. And I have seen neutral filter density, neutral density filter, but infrared videography and computerized pupillometry, I have not been across with these two instruments, but I come to know through the book. So we should find out this thing also. But all of you, please go try to do swinging light reflex, which is the most important neuroophthalmic investigation to be done. So grade 1 RAPD means weak initial pupillary constriction followed by greater redilatation on the affected side, whereas grade 2 is initial pupillary stall followed by the greater redilatation, means there is no constriction but slow redilatation will be there. And grade 3 is the one which every one of us can easily identify. So while the light is removed from the normal eye to the affected eye, there will be dilatation rather than any constriction. So this is the grade 3 pupillary RAPD. Then immediate pupillary dilatation with pupillary constriction is the second component is seen in grade 4, and this is the thing that we do in the grading of RAPD. So what are the causes of RAPD? Generally, it's already we have told the any lesion of the anterior visual pathway from retina to the lateral geniculate body, not including it, can cause RAPD. So the most commonly we come across with optic neuritis, followed by anterior ischemic optic neuropathies, then the compressive optic neuropathies. Asymmetric glaucoma can also present with relative occurrent pupillary defect. optic nerve tumor including glioma and meningioma, orbital disease including the thyroid orbitopathy, ischemic retinal disease, mainly CRAO, central retinal artery occlusion, and CRBO. Which type of CRBO? You should tell ischemic, not in the non-ischemic variety. Then ocular ischemic syndrome, if unilateral, then uh, retinal detachment involving the large area of retina, chiasmal compression like you can say craniopharyngioma and this pituitary tumor compressing one side only. Then optic tract lesion, post geniculate damage, and midbrain tectal damage. These are the lesions that can cause the RAPD. On going to Argyll-Robertson pupil is the another important pupillary reaction that we can come across. Is if you go through the ARP, Argyll-Robertson pupil means accommodation reflex is present. Here, this is a type of pupil in which near reflex is intact, but pupillary light reflex is absent. So, what will happen is pupil is usually constricted. Accommodation reflex will be there, but light reflex will be not there. This occur if the lesion is at pretectal nucleus. We have already been told you that the accommodation reflex does not it bypasses the pretectal nucleus. So lesion will be at the level, if the lesion is at the pretectal nucleus, accommodation reflex should be present and the pupillary reflex, light reflex will go. Commonly seen in neurosyphilis, that is torsoriciplics, which is not commonly seen these days, and Tape's dorsalis. Another is reverse of ARP, remove accommodation reflex in my stomach. So it is very rare. In this, pupil react to light but not to the accommodation. Means while shifting the gaze from distance to the near object, there will not be meiosis. But if you throw the light on the eye, there will be the reaction. So this occur in the lesion of occipitotectal tract, means that is in the part of the accommodation reflex. So it's seen in the diphtheria, most commonly diphtheria and encephalitis and tumor of corpus aquaticemina. Then another variety is the defect of oculosympathetic pathway, that is Horner syndrome. This is the lesion of the sympathetic system. So we have shown that in figure of dilated pathway having those three order neuron from the hypothalamus to the dilated pupilla. So the feature that you need to know and sometimes ask are meiosis means constricted pupil, ptosis means droopy eyelid, enophthalmos means eye is shrunken inside, anhidrosis, loss of ciliospinal reflex, and iris heterochromia. So in this test, the important to identify whether the lesion is in the preganglionic part, anterior to the trigeminal ganglion, or uh, post preganglionic means anterior to the um, preganglionic means posterior to the trigeminal ganglion, while those postganglionic means anterior to the this trigeminal ganglion. So that we can differentiate by 1% phenylephrine test. Other tests are cocaine, ephraclonidine, and hydroxyamphetamine. But commonly we have phenylephrine, and that is sufficient to differentiate the pre and post ganglionic. And we can if we can differentiate that, then we can target our investigation accordingly. As the cause, the preganglionic need neuroimaging, including that of spinal cord, but postganglionic generally are the local cause and need less investigation than that of the preganglionic. Even lung cancer can cause the Horner syndrome as it compresses the preganglionic fiber at the superior cervical ganglion. Then the another entity we need to know is Eddystonic pupil. Uh, this is due to the parasympathetic denervation at the level of ciliary ganglion. The disease is at the level of ciliary ganglion. So it is the local disease, not much dangerous for their life. What are the features you need to know is the affected eye will be dilated, but the shape is circular, regular, and the light response is there, but it's decreased, sluggish. We say it's not brisk. Secondly, there is preserved or enhanced constriction to the accommodation. When during accommodation, there will be sudden and enhanced constriction of the pupil. You can see the segmental iris constriction. Some part of the iris is constricting, some part of it is not constricting. Then the vermiform movement of the pupillary border. Pupillary border will be moving like a form. The most important feature of this is hypersensitivity to the pharmacologic constrictive agent. Generally, all of you are using pilocarpine. So even very low strength of pilocarpine can cause pupillary constriction, which is the diagnostic of Eddystonic. So these are the 5 features uh, commonly seen in young women of 20 to 40 years age. Uh, may be associated with loss of deep tendon reflex, which is known as AD syndrome, but exact etiology is not known, and more than 50% are idiopathic. So diagnosis of this is made by 0.125% pilocarpine test. Generally, normal eye constrict with 0.22% of pilocarpine, not with the 0.125% of pilocarpine. But if you see this first figure is left eye of first figure is dilated, but once you put the 0.125% pilocarpine, it constricts. So that means there is hypersensitivity to pilocarpine or cholinergic agent. So that is the confirmatory test, and this do not require any treatment. Only risk assurance is sufficient to tell them it is not a danger disease. No neuroimaging will be needed. Then another is Wernicke pupil, but it's not commonly practiced because it's difficult to elicit due to scattering and diffusion of light. In this, uh, this is seen in the optic tract lesion. So, while stimulating the blind half of retina, pupil show no reaction because that is not carrying light. While stimulating the seeing half, there will be the pupillary constriction. So, to make that is that sort of little light is very difficult. Even narrowest beam of a slit lamp can not stimulate one half and segregating another half. Generally, it should be less than 1 mm thickness. So pupil will be dilated on the affected side with ptosis in these cases. So this is the another type of pupil, but nowadays most of the people are not practicing this because we do have visual field which will give you the hemianopia and other neuroimaging. So this much of difficult pupillary reaction are generally not practiced these days. Another important neuroophthalmic disorder most of us should know is the oculomotor nerve palsy. We have already seen the fiber of the both sympathetic and fiber of the parasympathetic uh, system comes through the third nerve from the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. So once this nerve is paralyzed, obviously this most of the time this fiber will be gone. But in microvascular disease, including diabetic, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, generally these pupillary fiber are spared despite of having third nerve palsy. So this is the separate entity, but in the compressive lesion, mostly the aneurysm of the posterior uh, communicating cerebral artery and that of the anterior cerebral and middle cerebral artery compress the optic oculomotor nerve, resulting in the um, pupillary palsy. So they have dilated non-reactive pupil. Both light and near reflex will be gone in this type. You don't have near pupillary reaction on light. You don't have any pupillary reaction and accommodation on shifting your gaze from distant to near object. So absolute palsy will be there. Only sometimes very high power or high strength these pharmacological agent will be uh, constricting that pupil. So it obviously must be associated with motor paralysis, extraocular muscle supplied by this nerve, along with the ptosis and deviation of fiber. If you see the pupillary dilatation with third nerve palsy or extraocular movement disorder, you should do urgent neuroimaging because it is the neuroophthalmic emergency and it may be associated with enlarging aneurysm or ruptured aneurysm which need urgent uh, intervention. Lastly, the Hutchinson pupil. Um, it's little bit similar to that of the third nerve palsy, but the thing is that in this sign, pupil on the side of the intracranial mass lesion is dilated and unreactive to light. Okay, but there may be or may not be the this extraocular muscle paralysis. Means before being compressed, total paralysis of oculomotor nerve, their pupillary fiber are compressed and these results in the dilatation and unreactiveness, suggesting the mass lesion on that side of the uh, cranial cavity. So this is detected by Sir Jonathan Hutchinson. So its name is kept is the Hutchinson sign, commonly in the cerebral injury involving the base. The last slide of this long session is anisocoria evaluation chart. So most of the thing we have already covered in this short lecture. So um, while if you have two pupil of different size, then how to evaluate? You can go through this small chart. It's very good for anisocoria purpose. First step is to check the pupillary light reaction and then measure the pupil size. If anisocoria is noted, re-measure the pupil size in the bright and dim light. If good light reaction of the both eye, then anisocoria is greater in dark. Dark, if there is more anisocoria in dark, then check for the pupil dilatation lag. If there is no dilatation lag, that is physiological anisocoria. If yes, then you do epraclonidine test. Affected pupil now dilate, then it is the Horner syndrome. If 1% phenylephrine test is done, the affected pupil dilate more, then it is the postganglionic lesion. If not, that is preganglionic lesion. Similarly, if the anisocoria is more in light, we should examine patient on slit lamp and see whether there is any damage to the iris, sphincter tear, etc. And if no normal and segmental constriction only, then we have to go for pilocarpine test. And if there is no change on the pilocarpine test, then we should increase the stent to 1%. If there is any constriction with 1%, that is the Thornton palsy, and if no constriction, that is pharmacological dilatation, which we did not cover in our part. And secondly, if the 0.1 to 5% pilocarpine could constrict the pupil, that is always edystonic pupil, not Thornton palsy, not pharmacological dilatation. Thank you all, and stay safe in this pandemic.
Okay, that was a lovely presentation, sir. So, shall we move on to the discussion session?
Yes, we can.
There are few questions in our chat box. So, would you like to read me or would you like to read yourself?
Okay, I'll go through. First question by Neighbor Sital. It's very emerging therapy for the myopia nowadays. We are using 0.01% atropine therapy. A little bit of dilatation maybe, but generally with the use of this, there is not much daily activity are hampered in children, growing children. So it's not much bad for them. We can use in routine myopia case. It's good, I think. Second, Surbhi has one question. Explain meiosis. Okay, meiosis means in generally normal size of pupil in light condition is 3 to 4 mm. So if the size of pupil is less than that, or decrease in the size of diameter of pupil is called meiosis in my sense. But if you have any further elaboration, you can share with us. Then Ananta Paudel has asked, what type of reaction is there on dense amblyopia? How can we examine in this case? Can we have idea of cortical lesion from examining pupillary reaction? Yes, it's very good question. Generally, if we talk about the amblyopia is something different from this today's topic, but obviously there are so many literature suggesting that there is uh, lesser stimulation of efferent pathway as well as the this visual cortex in amblyopia. So generally pupillary reaction is not affected in this amblyopia, but by the examining the pupillary reaction, we can tell there is cortical lesion or somewhere else, because if the pupillary light reflex is not working, or if that is present, it represents the lesion anterior to the um, lateral geniculate body. If there is defect in pupillary light reflex also, uh, there is no connotation with that of visual cortex. So, but if we look toward the uh, lesion of reverse ARP, we have seen that lesion should be in the visual cortex or parastriate cortex. So, we can come across with some idea of lesion located in the cortical part. Another thing is sometimes if you have doubt whether lesion is in cortex or not, by if the um, everything is wrong, but the thing that your pupillary reaction is normal means the lesion in this condition should be in the cortex or the optic radiation. So in that way we can have some idea for the cortical lesion from the pupil. Other thing we can correlate. ARP, simply Argyll Robertson pupil, Janaki Raman. Argyll Robertson pupil means simply the lesion is in pretectal nucleus. So the light efferent limb of the light reflex is gone. So that's why there will be no light reflex. But the second thing is that you have the accommodation reflex present, because that accommodation reflex is bypassing your pretectal nucleus through the corticomesencephalic tract. It goes to the Edinger Westphal. Moessuri explain peak pupil in OGI. Okay. This is the question of Moessuri is something about peak pupil in OGI. Yes, it happened because you know that the iris is incarcerated from the this open globe injury, that wound area. So obviously there is mechanical pulling of that pupil towards the wound, so that lead to the peak pupil. Another thing is sometimes vitreous also is the cause of peak pupil, because vitreous is trying to leak from the your wound, so that's why it can peak pull the your that pupil towards the wound, resulting into peak pupil. Ananta, is there any different result if we check pupillary reaction dots with different color? How can we check RAPD in one-eyed patient? Yes, this is very important question again from Ananta. Is there is one thing I have not gone very nicely through photosynthetic therapy. For again for this question is related to amblyopia. More of pediatric ophthalmologists will tell you about this thing. But what can I say is the some range of the this light wave give better pupillary reaction than the other. I think they are using red and purple for this better part, and this um, violet for the darker part. But actually, I'm not very clear on this part. But the second thing is you can check RAPD in one-eyed patient. Ideally, RAPD is relative thing again, but it can be tested in one-eyed patient by these neutral density filter and pupillometers. If you have any further elaboration, we can see here on this chart. I have not gone detailedly through this unilateral RAPD part, one-eyed RAPD part, but it's possible, I think. Siva asks the nystagmus in nystagmus eye condition, how to diagnose a pupillary reaction? Okay, it's again difficult, but there are so many things that can give you idea. Simple reaction, light reaction, you can see on that. Eye is moving, but pupil is not moving in the nystagmus, so you can see the pupillary reaction on light only. Reverse RAPD. I have not gone through this, Janaki, but there is the term reverse RAPD. We will go through that. Maheshwari is saying fibrotic sphincter. Yes, this occur in so many conditions. This is again not a neuro-ophthalmic question, but ophthalmology, as a ophthalmology people, we need to know. This occur in so many conditions, like in age-related condition, um, uh, senile meiosis will occur due to fibrotic sphincter. The sphincter muscle will, after healing, after damage to sphincter muscle is the normal healing process. This muscle will fibrose, and there will be the more action of this muscle resulting in to the fibrotic sphincter, that we can say. I think this much of question are there, but some of them are very good question. We can take their view also.
Yes, sir. Was
Okay.
okay. So I think that was all about the discussion.
Yeah.
I'd like to request you, sir, to share your experience in the e-learning session today.
Um, it's very good. Um, Two-way conversation is the best thing that I can get from this. It's my first experience in e-learning in reality. I have not been across with this earlier. I was somehow afraid, but with you people, it's very good. I enjoyed this session very much.
Yeah, it was a very lovely and very informative session. We got got chances, learn to new things. So I'd like to thank you for your lovely time and the lovely experience and knowledge that you imparted on us today. And also I'd like to thank our audience to be supportive as well as interactive, attentive to this session. So on that note, any
Uh, I have to just thank all of you. I
sure.
think very good participation from audience also. I'm thankful to you people, obviously, and these all guys. It's very good learning for me too.
Okay, so on that note, I would like to end the meeting.